So welcome everybody to another episode of the Futbol Idealists podcast. We were missing for a week, but now we're back. I'm telling you, it's been a bit of trouble to get it going consistently, but we're getting there. So today we have two very special guests. For the first time, they're not the members of the website, but good guests indeed. We have Karen and George, both big Arsenal fans. They are on their own podcasts. I'll let you both when you get to like shout out the links and everything. But I know that I've known them for a while through group chats and everything. I've been on their pod multiple times. George was on the pod for like a year ago, I think it's been now. When we talked about Arsenal back then, much different time. Like if you remember, I think it was during the Slavia tie.
Oh, that is a long time ago.
Yeah, and it was
before. Super League.
Oh, yes.
Controversy.
Feels like a lifetime ago.
Yeah. It was before the second leg as well. So like everyone was very worried about how that was going to turn out. So of course, obviously, I'll let you guys introduce yourself, shout out your ads and BOP and everything. So George, go.
Yeah, as Nick said, like graciously, it's been a nice return back to the pod. You can find me at GeorgeV_AFC on Twitter. And, of course, you can find us on our podcast, Ball Over Passion at BOP Footy. But yeah, mate, no, I'm doing well. I'm excited because I think finally there's a lot of interesting things to talk about with Arsenal. Like I think there's a lot of narrative smashing. There's a lot of excitement in the fan base, and just through the screen, I can only look at stuff from an international perspective, but I'm seeing a lot of engagement from fans, not just online, but like it's the atmosphere in the Emirates seems to be miles apart from what it's been in years, to be honest with you. So now, yeah, mate, it's an exciting time to be an Arsenal fan.
It definitely is. Karen, introduce yourself, mate.
Yeah. Well, my name's Karen. You can find me at Karen BOP. It's probably in the description of wherever we're finding this.
It will be. Yeah, it will be.
So, and as I'm a co-host with George, unfortunately, with on Ball Over Passion, we've decided to we've done quite well with it, I feel, and it's been coming up to a year now, which is kind of cool. But in terms of Arsenal, great times ahead. We have a clash of ideologies here. I'm kind of in the middle of both of them, so it will be interesting to see where this takes us in terms of Arsenal's future. And yeah, it's a very exciting time to be an Arsenal fan. It seems like we're finally seeing some sort of progress in terms of the fan base and where I feel like the fan base is caught up to the tactical nous that we've been seeing for the past, I would say, year or so. But it's nice to see, and it's nice to see some unity and some actual positivity in the fan base instead of the same narratives again and again. So yeah, excited to talk to both of you. I'm kind of outnumbered from 2-1 Greek to non-Greek, but we'll see what we can do here. So let's do this.
Okay, so I think I wanted to make the theme of this pod actually, to talk about the tactics. I mean, yes, we can talk a little bit about future recruitment and everything. Again, everyone seems to only want to talk about transfers, even though we're doing so well on the pitch right now. We'll get to that maybe later, but I wanted to really talk about the tactics. And because Arsenal have been on a pretty good run recently, have become more consistent. So before we get into the details, I just wanted to take it back a little and look a bit of a timeline throughout the Arteta era. So obviously he comes in and has a great impact immediately. He motivates everyone, gets them pressing, passing the ball better, obviously implementing all these non-negotiables. But obviously from the beginning there's trouble. It's not easy. The team can only sustain that for 30 or 35 minutes per game. The transition is tough. It's a dysfunctional squad. There's a dysfunctional structure all over. And then COVID strikes. We have the league returns. We have the FA Cup run, which was great, and it seemed like at that time everyone was really behind what was going on. But then the summer was a little disappointing, I will say. Back then, obviously, we got some really good players that are key cogs of today's team, but still, we didn't get everything we needed. We go on this terrible run. And then, from then on, I think there's a clear cutoff point, we can say, regarding Arteta Summer Allison, which was Boxing Day of 2020, that Chelsea game where he switches over back to the 4-3-1, introduces Emil Smith Rowe, puts Saka on the right. Martinelli starts on the left, a lot of new stuff, which, like I said, obviously starts up front, which wasn't a consistent theme up until now, but, I think it was a foreshadowing of what was about to happen with all out of the team. And then, ever since then, it's been very inconsistent in general. It's been better. I don't know if it's fair to say it's been inconsistent because, the points tally and everything has improved, but I think in terms of performances, it has been a little inconsistent, like in terms of the press, in terms of chance creation. We've had a few very flat games, especially at the back end of last season. And then obviously this season was the whole project rebuild in the summer, many young players, a controversial window, I might say, because personally, even though I'm a firm believer of Arteta and what Arsenal are trying to do right now, I wasn't too excited about our window in general. And I've been proven wrong about that, as many other people have. Season starts, obviously terrible start. 3 losses in a row, understandable losses though. Look, we've said these games obviously count, of course, but if you look at the team in terms of the new signings, Odegaard wasn't playing, White only played one of these games, Gabriel didn't, Partey didn't, Tomiyasu didn't, Ramsdale didn't. It was a very different team. Lacazette didn't even play a game, but then it started slowly improving. Three wins in a row, but then 2 poor performances and 2 draws against Palace and Brighton, and then and then a few more consistent results, and we come to this point where we lose back to United and Everton away, and it seems like another point where like everyone is outraged and the Arteta out brigade starts raging again. And yeah, and to be honest, I was kind of worried. It's not like I jumped to Arteta out or anything. I haven't up to this point, but it was a worrying time because we had our players back. Not the full team, but most of the full team, and results and performance were still very consistent. But I think after that we can say there's been a clear turning point. Lots of wins in a row. Obviously in between those 2 rounds were City, which we all know how we feel about that one. I think we shouldn't discuss that until a bit later. Burnley was, yeah. Burnley was a bit unlucky in general. Because we missed a lot of key players in our team. But after that, we've been on a very good run. 3 wins against tough opposition, which we normally struggle against. 5 at the back, low block. We've been inconsistent against that. And now we look the main candidates, the favorites for top 4. So, I want to start with George. What do you think I think I know your answer, but what do you think has been if you had to single out one key change in the team ever since basically the Southampton game? What's changed and why have Arsenal improved so much on a tactical perspective?
For me, it's simple. It's Granit Xhaka and Thomas Partey. And when you do isolate, you talk about there's inconsistent patches of performances, but we've seen this almost 2-month run before, even in a pivot setup, taking away ideologies. But we've seen that happen when Xhaka and Partey are together in the team very consistently, even though it's a small sample, ironically. But in both seasons, there were 6 to 8 game periods where when we did have those 2 starting in the team, our ability to sustain pressure is just miles different. And for me, when I look at it, it's a very simple formula for me. It's technical security and it's stopping transitions. That equals the equation for sustaining pressure. And really the biggest difference that I've seen is this importance on being able to control your second balls in the middle of the park, but also this team has kind of evolved positionally. So there's a lot of better fluid rotations. There's a lot of players, namely Martin Odegaard, who's really improved going in to out. Understanding those rotations have been really crucial in making sure that we attack across the width of the pitch and not maybe just with a left-handed bias or with a specific pattern of play. We're no longer relying on one pattern. We're now a lot more variable, a little bit more flexible in terms of where we're attacking on the pitch. But I think that all comes down from the structure of Granit and Thomas Partey. I think when you look at kind of this team, there's a distinct difference when those 2 don't start together. Regardless of injuries and maybe inconsistencies of what we have, as long as those 2 start, they dominate. They win the midfield battle. And they also consistently make, way more goals scored and way less goals conceded. So for me, that's the biggest change as opposed to maybe an ideology standpoint, because I've seen very similar pros in different ideologies, depending on kind of your own subjective view of how you view the game. Everybody has a tactical setup that they may prefer over one or the other, but I've seen Arteta use many systems to success. Whether you want to highlight the FA Cup success, factually, it was an 8-game period where we had excellent success in a different way. If you want to look at a pivot, we've had excellent success in the pivot in a different way. We've had excellent success in a lone pivot in a different way, very much of recent. But consistently, when you kind of mention those non-negotiables, Nick, it's really been that 2-3-5 or the 3-2-5 base structure that we seem to alter depending on the opponent. And, that kind of fluidity in the team, I think there's been a big movement of people understanding how to fill in and where. And, my biggest example that I look at is actually Cedric, ironically. So I think, Martin Odegaard has probably shown the biggest improvement within the squad, but I've used Cedric as somebody that not many people like, me included, and his ability to kind of come into the team, but also contribute more than just being a cog, more than just being there, because there was a couple instances when, when Arteta didn't have his ideal team, we didn't have smooth sailing. Like, that was definitely a valid concern over his tenure.
For sure.
And I think it's gone beyond now having backups being good at their role, but actually having an impact. Like, Cedric is not just there to take part. He has actively been very good in these games. And I think it's beyond a positional advantage. I think it's the team and the squad understanding where to fill in and when, because this hasn't always been the case. We've seen the line drop. We've seen, the counter press not be effective at times. And those things are less about system ideology. They're more about the players understanding where they need to be on and off the ball. But I think in general, if I had to make it into one pillar, just to kind of go back in this rant, Xhaka and Partey make that possible for more people in this team than without. And consistently, whatever we want to employ, the team trusts that pillar. And when they're in the team, we're able to really sustain pressure, which makes us win games more.
Yeah, you're right. I definitely agree with that. And, you mentioned Cedric as well. And I wanted to say that, like, ever since I think the whole time that we've seen Xhaka and Partey together playing in the heart of Arsenal's midfield, whether it's like in a double pivot or Xhaka playing as an 8, regardless, we've seen that the team looks to immediately have better depth. People were entirely uncomfortable with Cedric playing games because we had only seen him play in the beginning of the season with, like, I don't know, El Neni and Kolasinac and Holding and those guys. And Odegaard at the double pivot against Man City, which didn't work that well. So,
even Rob versus Liverpool, right?
Yeah,
like another example.
Yeah, they were able to step up, to come into the team. And, Cedric looks better. Holding has come in, as you said.
Pepe.
Pepe, definitely. We have success with, not recently, but like we've had some success with Alba in the past, the Spurs game, obviously. Same pivot, but different striker. We've had success with Smith Rowe on the left, Martinelli on the left, a lot of Tierney, Tavares, a lot of different versions. So I want to go to you, Karen, now. How do you think Arsenal can sustain this run? Or, because, it's fair to say, if I want to act, just to counter all these points, maybe it's not that I believe that, but maybe, we've seen how inconsistent we are with Arteta. So why should I think that this run that we've had going right now, why should I think that's going to sustain itself to the end of the season?
I mean, there's 3 different reasons for me. One, if you look at our home record, it's pretty damn decent. It's very decent, in fact. And a lot of the big 6 games, I think the only ones left are Chelsea and Tottenham that we have to play away. I think we've got Liverpool at home and we've got someone else at home. I can't remember. United at home, sorry. Apart from that, our form outside the big 6 has actually been sustainable over not only this past season, but over the last calendar year and almost a year and a half now. So if you're talking to me about sustainability, you're talking to me about issues that are going on in terms of sustaining pressure, I would point to the fact that the run available is not only favorable, we don't have any other competitions to actually compete in, and the opposition that we have that are coming up against, if you talk about, for example, the likes of a West Ham in the Europa League, Man United, Champions League, Spurs they're playing right now as we record this, but we don't know if they're going to be in the FA Cup. There's people fighting on multiple fronts, and the season is wearing on. Injuries will start to take their toll. And the third point, I think, is just clearly the clear improvements that Mikel has made in terms of being able to be a bit more flexible in terms of his approach. I feel like there's been at times where I think we can all agree that we've been frustrated about his in-game management, especially towards the end of the last season, when he was getting
definitely.
a bit. It was getting a bit too frustrated with his substitutions. I think he was leaving it a bit too late at times. The Villarreal situation is a good example of playing a false nine when they've never really played it before. There have been issues that have been going on. I think Mikel's grown with the team this year a lot. I feel like he's much more adaptable this year. There's been an identification of having a higher 8 and using Granit's ability to enter the final third and to a greater ability, because you have that ability to have that inside channel given to Granit, and he's able to take the ball from the middle third to the final third, which if you look at last season, he had the most final third entries of anyone in the league last year. So it shows that he's understanding that he needs to be more flexible. He's understood how to break down low blocks a lot better this year. And a lot of our best performances have been at 3 at the backside. So, for example, Wolves, Spurs, Villa at home, a lot of them have been low block, kind of just counter-attacking sides. I think he's understood what he has got from this team as well, in terms of the squad. I think he's got more control over this team as well, in terms of people that he's jettisoned, people that he's come in. And I was with you, Nick. I actually rated the summer at 6.5 out of 10 because I was disappointed in the amount of the lack of departures. Because I thought, hang on a second, there's people that we've still got here that he hasn't got rid of, and he's still continuing to get rid of these players that he doesn't need. And a lot of people seem to be sort of worried that we've only got a certain amount of players, but he's showing that with the amount of fixtures we have, you do not need a 23-man squad of bloated deadwood, as it were. So yeah, I do think it's sustainable. If you look at our, I think the XGD of our opponents left in this run is negative, which is interesting to me. I find that that's obviously a good thing for us. It means that our run is actually favoring towards an easier side than a harder side. So let's see. I mean, I definitely think we're definitely the favorites. So we'll have to see what happens the rest of the season.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's fair. Obviously, as you said, aside from the tactical improvements and the individual improvements and all that, we have there's the schedule is favorable to us, and obviously, you can have the perfect tactics, but like you also need those favorable conditions to go in your favor, like fit squad and your opponents having tougher games. Perhaps getting a bit lucky with opponents' injuries. It's all a part of the game. I feel like sometimes it's happened a lot with Arteta, and I get it because a lot of Arteta fans really put every single good thing they give credit to Arteta that the team does. So on the other hand, so that's generated the opposite reaction from a certain other part of the fan base, which like they blame everything on the coach. And I think at times at times a lot of people do it, and it's not just Arsenal. It's Chelsea.
It's point
United
scoring,
as well.
isn't it, mate? So that they do hyperbole to justify the position of their opposition a bit. So even if you say, I like Arteta, I'm going to hyperbolize your argument to justify what you said, just to equal it.
The other thing is Nick, is the hyperbolization of expectations. So if you're Arteta, in or like a fan of Arteta, you say, oh well, the gap with the expectation was 6, then all the Arteta outers were saying we're going to finish 8th. So if we finish 5th, that's good enough. And if you're Arteta out, well, if he's not going to get top 4 now, it's all done. I can't believe he's not even in a title race. He spent 200 million. You know what I mean? There's hyperbolization of expectations on both sides.
On both sides, yeah.
So it's interesting to me.
Yeah, definitely. But just as I was saying, it's just a lot of the time there's plenty of conditions which they're not totally in control of the manager. Like sometimes it happens. You can have a good tactical plan, and the players are just not playing well. They're not passing the ball. I don't know if you like to use the word pass quickly enough, because it's something that commentators use all the time, and it does my head in. Like the solution to break down low blocks just to pass quicker. It's not. Yeah. Anyway, it's not very related, but like a lot of the time, we've seen I want to say that I want to give some credit to the players as well, because they've been passing better. The passing has been more fluid. They've been pressing with more energy, and I think mentally something has clicked. We saw in the Wolves game. Like, I don't know. I feel like if you've been an Arsenal fan for many years and you told me that, like, going to the 75th minute you expected Arsenal to turn the Wolves game around, I think you were lying, to be honest. Like, if you watch this team play for the last 10 years, it's nobody expected. And it's, I think something, and obviously it's an extremely different group to like 2015 and 2010 and 2017. It's an entirely different group, and something's clicked mentally. It's a part of football that is a lot of the time, but by people that are into tactics, it's an under discussed part. So yeah, I think in my opinion, at least, the two major improvements that we've seen tactically in Arsenal the past few months have been, for me, it's two. It's the pressing, which has improved a lot. We haven't been falling into a mid block. I think we're striking a better balance. In the past, we started pressing high, and then after a point, we were just, after we went ahead, we were happy to just let a foot off the gas and sit back. And at times we had seen like the first pressure fails, and then the team immediately falls back without continuing over on the press. You have to follow through. It's not just press the goalkeeper, and if the ball gets to the left back, you stop pressing. And then the other thing, which I saw a stat earlier today and tweet about, and I was very happy about it. It's that Arsenal have been much better, have been the team that has attacked, that has created the most chances through the middle, through the central third of the pitch, third horizontally, vertically, sorry, not horizontally. And I think that's incredible, because I saw someone say that, I'm not sure about it, but I saw someone say that last year we were second to last. You did, George? Oh yeah,
yeah,
it was you. Yeah. So like, so many times last season, and I think there are a couple of games where it was where we looked threatening, but it was just so much like from side to side, no penetration through the middle. It was. I remember particularly like the Leicester game at home where we lost last season in the end. We created a lot of chances, but like we couldn't get to, like, 0 zone 14 entries. We couldn't do anything. It's like the team, it was like the left side of the team and the right side of the team. And like the only player that was centrally was a striker. Right, and
that kind of variability across the pitch is improved. Yeah. But what's interesting is, like, when you pair that statistic with, there was another article that came out in The Athletic a couple months back when they broke down by each zone, though, this time, where the opposition had the more possession. And I think in red it shows it was your own. But something that was really interesting actually is that that area of the pitch, the zone 14, we still aren't very good at. And even in the right half space, it still is occupied by the opposition. But what I find really encouraging is this recent article showed there's the intent of a lot of our passing patterns to come central. So that just means to me there's a quality issue. Central, which, shock horror, we know about, and the fact that I think Lacazette is so in the middle third of the pitch. The one thing that I don't think gets talked about enough is our third man running. It's been massively improved in every single player, and every single person's intent to get in the box has been way bigger this year than it has the year before. Like, we all have debates about players, right? Like Martin Odegaard and Emile Smith-Rowe, the famous number 10 debate. But one thing that's consistent between the two of them is their third man running. Both of these people are arriving at the middle of the box far more, with more frequency and efficiency than they were last season. And I think that's a big reason why the central zone is bigger, even though our opposition dominates there, if that makes sense. And that's because our patterns of play are really to enforce that. Like, I think that kind of explains the issue, because you would assume if we have more patterns there, we must have more possession there, but we actually don't. Like, that's actually not it. And so I think if we improve quality, it's encouraging, because then you start saying, okay, if my patterns are there where I'm equal left and right, but I'm really good central, if I improve the quality there, my goals will shoot up, right?
Yeah.
And so that for me excites me the most. And then you change those little blue squares of the zones that were more oppositions to red, and then you're like, oh my God, we're a City 2.0, which, by the way, has been backed in stats all season. So I think that's maybe where a lot of fans draw trust and a lot of faith in.
Yeah, definitely. I think one of the reasons that you didn't mention about the improvement centrally, I don't think it's not backed up. I don't have the stats in front of me, but what I've noticed in the past few games was how we've used how since the return of Partey to the side after AFCON, we've been a lot better at progressing the ball centrally. Like, I remember you said that you prefer him going into like being a right half space progressor, but we've used more so Ben White for that role, I think, and Odegaard dropping in, and Tomiyasu when he's been available. Partey has been central, and obviously, it took quite a while for this to happen. Obviously he had some fitness issues and everything, but if you remember last season, games that Thomas Partey played as a 6, he was losing the ball a lot, and it's the main criticism of people that don't like him in that position. But I think recently, aside from how many times he gives away or everything, which has reduced, I think in general we've used him a lot to get the ball through the middle. Like his teammates trust him a lot. I feel they give it to him in like the most improbable situation where he's pressed from 3 sides because they know he's going to body fend his way out of it. And he's good at receiving centrally, and he's also good at firing balls centrally. So yeah, I think a lot of we've been. And also, as you said, George, when you go through the middle, it's a lot easier to then go out wide. So like when you go into the left, or for example, you're attacking all the game through the left, obviously there's this famous pattern of like overloading the left to then attack the right. But that's predictable. I think it gets predictable at this point. So if you start through the middle, you have a lot more optionality to go through the right or through the left.
You know what it is, mate? Like I really use it. I know nobody likes math, but just logically, it's 180 view vision centrally.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're on one side of the pitch, it's always going to be 90, depending on where you're facing. Just factually, there's always a side blocked.
Yeah, the touchline. Yeah, it's blocked. So yeah, I agree there. You're right. So yeah, I think obviously, it's been a lot better centrally. One of the other things I've noticed is Odegaard getting a lot more centrally. Obviously, we want him to go to be going wider as well, but I think he's improved he's been more brave into getting in those positions centrally, and obviously the patterns have been improving. There's been our passing has been clean. Those combinations going from right to central have improved, and I've seen Odegaard receiving the ball centrally. In order to play the killer pass to the striker or the left winger coming in, and I think that's been noticeable. Like I remember seeing against Wolves a real nice pattern where Cedric overlapped to overload the left, and then Odegaard was in zone 14, and he found him with a ball because Saka was occupying the half space. It's just again, as you said, optionality. It's been so much better lately, and I hope it continues.
It must be said just really quickly, because everyone patterns me as an Odegaard hater, and I'm really not. But like one of the big things that he's really improved this year is two things, right? His technical security and contact is much better. It is. Like when you look back at those Brighton games, the Palace games, it wasn't just positionally. He was losing the ball way too loosely.
Yeah, and he was getting bullied.
Yeah, he was getting, and he doesn't do that anymore. So credit to him, right? And another thing, he is going into out a lot more. Like when you look at Brentford, you look at the Wolves, how many times did you see him in the wide channel? That there were quite a few times, and he's pushing Saka inside, and that willingness to run, it opens the pitch, right? Like it's less about me, the physical portion, but having two players that can go in and out means the opposition can't focus on a man marking job on you, and that's been the biggest thing, because it kind of eliminates that low block that a lot of people do. So you have a low block, right, to stave off the pressure. But people used to just triple team Saka, and I call it Jordan rules just because the boy's our best player. But when you have Odegaard making those willing runs and Cedric who's able to do that, the opposition can't focus on Saka, because now they know that there's always going to be a wide option. There's always going to be somebody going there. So you need to almost make your defense zonal. And that benefits us, right? Because then when that's zonal, you go 1v1. And then it's a matter of, can I beat you? So I think that's the biggest improvement, because he has gone central. But for me, that flexibility where it's not predictable. It's not like, for example, Kieran's always left wing. That's not the case, right? We've seen it. And in fact, even the Brentford goal, like the deadlock's broken by that overlap, ironically, and that rotation. But I think there's a lot more flexibility in this team where it's like we may start with people high, i.e. Granit Xhaka, but there's moments where this team understands that he doesn't have to stay there. And I think this idea of zones over formations is like one of my favorite phases since I was Saliba season, so long ago. But I think that's a huge improvement in the team.
Yeah, we'll get to the zones or formation thing. We'll get to later. I just want to say, with the whole Saka triple team thing, we always, I think, as a fan base, because we love Saka and because he's so good again, when he's so good at getting out of trouble when he has two men on him or even three at times, we've always treated it as a good thing, the fact that he's getting triple team. But to be honest, I think, if you look, it's not good. It's the fact that the fact that teams were willing to put three men on him, it's because they didn't worry about anyone else on that side. But this has not been the case the last few games. Cedric has given an overlap. I'm interested to see how Tomiyasu does in that role, because I think he can do it, but I just think he hasn't. I think he has the skills to an overlap back, but I don't think he's very confident going to the final third. Like, he's hesitant with his cross and all that. But I think he has the technique and the physicality. But yeah, this has been a note. I mean, to be honest, I haven't even noticed it that much. But like, now that you said it, the whole triple thing, I thought we've barely
Man
seen
City
it
was a key. Man City was a massive example of it, though. Like, Man City, they were going. I think it was Ake, Stones.
It was big. Yeah,
it was a lot of people on him at one time.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're down to 10 men at that point, though, so it made more sense to like.
No, even in the first half, they were doing it.
Yeah,
I think they put Ake couldn't handle him, and they bought.
There was Ake, there was Diaz, but I think like for me, but that's why I do focus on Brentford. I'll be honest, Nick. Like in this like 8 to 10 game run, right? There was great performances, but I almost marked. Okay, City was the landmark, but after that we struggled a bit. Of course, with context.
Yeah, but
then
it wasn't even many Premier League games. It was just one. It was the Burnley game.
No,
exactly.
It was the Burnley game.
And then when you get to the Burnley game, we deserved to win. But for me, the real kind of eyes out moment was Brentford. And then from Brentford on, we've consistently dominated teams excessively in that area. And I think that's when I really noticed the positional fluidity, like that willingness of Cedric, that willingness of Odegaard. And we saw it in both Wolves games and Brentford.
Yeah, I was impressed because like I was sitting like pretty much pitch side. I was in the second row on the Brentford game, and it was right in front of me, the right side, and it was like there was so much movement. Whereas I remember sitting at that point against Newcastle, and I remember it was just Saka alone, but now it was much better. Just want to get back to the press because obviously we've pointed out that like when you retain the ball better and when you're able to sustain pressure, pressing comes easier. But I think it's also improved. In settled phase, which I think that's how you judge a press. I mean, anyone can counter press if you have like half all your team in the opponent's final third. It's not easy for the other team to get the ball out of there, but like I think against Wolves was like a very classic Arteta pressing performance. Like it reminded me.
It was different though, Nick. Like home and away, they were very different. And like we talked a lot about it on our podcast, but the decision to go zonal versus man marking on Ruben Neves, for example, was a very distinct difference home and away, even within the press. Like we've started to do this like 4-2-3-1 press, of course, where I think last year was more like 3-2-2-3. In broad terms, but we've really done this thing where Laka or Odegaard has sat on the DM and we've been zonal in other areas, but we've gone man-to-man centrally on the first ball progressor.
Yeah.
And that's happened at 3 of the back teams. It happened at Leicester with Samare, it happened at Villa with Luiz, it happened at Spurs even with Højbjerg. Like if you go back, we saw glimpses of it. But this press, like you say, in the settled form has been absolutely immense. And I just saw a difference because, again, away at Wolves, we didn't do that. We went zonal. Yeah. And I think to our detriment because we saw Trincao getting a lot of space in the first half. And, we basically saw Neves operate really quite well away, whereas home, that man-to-man marking was very different. Left-hand side, but even on the right, when Moutinho would go in, I think that primary ball progressor of the opposition is man-to-man. Everything else has been zonal to almost funnel it wide or funnel it away from that person to cut off the lanes because we use the touch line as, an option to cut, right? And we push up with our fullbacks to really squeeze that space, but that central option is always man-to-man. That's what I've noticed.
I
mean, there's 2 points really with the press. One, as George mentioned, it's basically what we've identified this year is about how to block progression through their main progressor. We've identified a progressor in opposition teams, as George mentioned, Douglas Luiz, Bukayo Samare, Pierre-Emile Højbjerg. But we've identified, okay, because the thing is, I feel like I don't know if you guys remember, we were going 4-4-2 for a while. We had both Alba and Laka on the pitch at the same time. And
Yeah.
it was getting to a point where Mikel would just go, Laka, just go find their DM and just sit on him, basically. Just get him and block it. And then it starts to work. And I feel like if you have the ability, because if the whole point of a 4-2-3-1, I'm sure we're going to get into it, is to keep your pivot. You want to keep basically your central compactness. You want two in the middle to funnel, as George mentioned, the opposition wide. You want to use the touchline as an extra defender, and you want to basically force your opposition to go long and go say, look, we're not going to allow you to come centrally. Either you're going to hit your wingers and they're going to go, or we're going to hit your fullbacks and they're going to go. And as we all know, that pass to the fullback miscontrolled results in a turnover, because it's just a throw in. So the whole point of our press this year, I think whereas Mikel's improved greatly this year, is recognizing and identifying specific situations in which you have to hit your man. You have to make sure that is the non-negotiable there. The press is, whenever we've played well, it's always been because we've identified their main ball progressor and sat on him. And if it's a centre back, we've tried to sit off him and make sure the lanes are blocked, basically. So, for example, with John Stones, I don't know if you remember the Man City game, because Rodri was dropping into that 3, and John Stones would walk up. So it was a case where we would have the ability to basically just sit and block the lanes, because he was trying to advance as John Stones does. And I feel like that balance between both blocking passing lanes and being able to hit your man and win your duels is a credit to not only Mikel, but also both to Xhaka and Partey, because you have the ability to say, look, you've got two people there that are able to hoover up second balls and able to press their man if they enter their zone. So it's very much a case of central compactness with the ability to identify where you want to allow your opposition to progress the ball, basically, which is interesting to me.
Yeah, I mean, again, it all goes back to Partey and Xhaka. I mean, without them, you can't do that press, because a lot of those teams, we've dared them to go long all the time. And so, for example, I remember the West Ham game. We pressed really well that game, right? And West Ham generally do go long. And that's their bread and butter. That's how they get up the pitch. They hit the ball in the channels and then win the second ball, right? And we dared them to do that, and we beat them at that game because we had Partey and Xhaka winning everything, and obviously White and Gabriel winning the first ball, and then
I definitely want to just add on, like, White. It's really important because the aggressive line together with the Partey Xhaka security blanket is super important, because I think even earlier in the season when we weren't, that relaxed line allowed the pivot to be isolated. I think that was a big reason why we saw the island. Like, it's less about the 4-3-3 and ideology, but it was more about how we played it. Like Brighton and Palace, the reason that we saw the island is less to do with Partey being less than ideal, which was a little bit the case. Like, let's be fair, he's up to level technically, but it was more about our line. Like, we weren't closing the spaces enough. And so like you said, I think it gives us the security blanket, where there were so many times White would step aggressively to Chan Lee, would step aggressively to Jimenez, even when they did go long, we would win the ball. So it was like, from both sides, we squeeze the pitch enough that we trust to go man-to-man. Because man-to-man is very dangerous pressing when it goes wrong. And we see that with Leeds, like, to the extreme, right? But I think that the thing that gives us that security to do it, even with players, by the way, that aren't athletically inclined, like Odegaard isn't the best man-to-man presser. He's always a willing presser, but he's not necessarily successful in the pressures all the time. But that doesn't matter, because we have that security blanket that if he guides them to the wing, we're able to zonally close off that passing lane. So even if they go long, White's there. If they go long, Gabriel's there. Like, I think that for me has been the biggest, bonus, that these two guys in the middle of the park give us the security to do those things higher up the pitch, to gamble, to even use a player who's maybe not ideal in quotations, but still succeed beautifully in doing it by going man to man. You don't need a physical monster to do that role. You don't. You just need the security behind that they're able to close space quickly and effectively. And then you can gamble. And then you can do that.
The other thing is it's a simple point, but it can't be understated. The fact that you have both Gabriel and White able to step and get into that final half and really close the pitch off, try to use the halfway line as, you know, an offside trap, and really try and push the line up, has also allowed our attacking players to really get into people's faces and really actually get and push the press a bit higher up. Because you could see at times when we had Holding and Gabriel that you didn't have the recovery pace to push the line up as high as you'd want to. Now with White there, you have the ability to say, look, if you beat us on that long ball, we have the recovery pace to, you know, hit and recover the ball back. It's that added confidence when you have those two centre backs at the back line, and the fact that they're both so high, it allows for your 2-3-5 to actually, even if it loses the ball, to track into the 4-2-3-1 press quite easily and in minimal space as well. So you have your bodies where you need them instead of having to, you know, be cautious. You allow players to hit their individual duels instead of actually, you know, being cautious about who's behind them. It allows for a more aggressive press. So I think that's key as well. Yeah. I think White's been a massive addition in terms of our press, just in general.
Yeah, I thought like the Wolves game was like a really good example as to why Arteta wanted White to partner Gabriel, because a lot of the time we saw Gabriel, he was really good at like controlling the aerial duel. You know, with Jimenez, he was onto him all the time and he didn't let him win anything in the air. He was on his back all the time, and you know he mostly dealt with the long balls. And then with White, he was on Huang, who played as a left wing, but more so as a second striker. He was in the half space, and you know White was the one that was dropping in deeper to receive the ball to feet, and White was always on him. He was especially the second half when we were pushing on for the comeback. It was like a masterclass from Ben White into like engaging your opponent from behind in order to win the ball back after the vertical pass. So yeah, I think those two have been another reason why we've been why our press have improved. It's that box, you know. I think George, you have talked about a lot about you know the box of the two central midfielders, the two center backs in the 4-4-2, whereas they're the key cog into how you're gonna press teams, and you know, because you can press teams successfully, but then if they try to go long, they can beat you that way. But you need to, in order to complete the press, you need to have the people who are going to win the first and second ball, and then also have enough technical security that they can, you know, not just knock it back forwards, but like control the ball,
use it,
and use it, and like, that's awesome. Like you see White, he steps up, wins the ball, and like right outside the final third, and then he gets to the final third, and he knows where to pass. I mean, that doesn't happen with like Rob Holding or like Per Mertesacker back in the day. That doesn't really happen. But
even David Luiz, like I loved him, but why he was a big upgrade on David Luiz is even Luiz, he would drop the line deep. You know what I mean? Like, and he would really expose that long ball, which he had in his locker, no doubt. But he wasn't as aggressive in the space off the ball.
Yeah, that's why he only worked well in the back three centrally, because you know by the time he joined us, you know, he was great for. I actually think, you know, he had some bad moments with the red cards and everything.
He was very good for us generally.
He was very good, but he was finished physically. Like he had no pace left, and like that's why he didn't really do well. Like I think these bad players were like when he played in the 4 at the back, but like during the FA Cup run and last season we played with a 3, he was fantastic for us in general. And but obviously, you know, you need in order to be like an aggressive team, you need athletic players. It's the one thing we've learned with Liverpool and with City, and even with team like the Red Bull teams. You know, then they recruit athletic players all over the pitch who they can not only press, but also they can not only press high up, but also complete the press when the ball gets to the midfield. So yeah, I think it's a good transition now, because we've been talking about the midfield and the double pivot and the 4-3-3 and everything. I think at this point, you know, we had a lot of debates because, you know, I've been more of I've been promoting the 4-3-3 a lot. George has really wanted a double pivot. Karen, I think, has been a little bit in the middle.
Definitely in the middle, not on the fence. Let me clarify, right? Okay, I prefer a 4-3-3. I always have. I've indoctrinated him. You know, you didn't indoctrinate me. What happened is my football has come from a combination of Wenger and Cruyff, right?
Yeah.
Those are my two footballing idols, and I've always loved the 4-3-3. But as football always is, it's cyclic, and at this moment in time, to win games in the Premier League, it seems like the way that looks like it will be easiest to win games and the most dominant way to win games is the pivot. So I'm just saying, like, at this moment in time, the pivot is probably going to be where we're going to need to win games. But if you're talking about me as a football purist, I'm a 4-3-3 guy. Always have been. Yeah. So there's a difference. There's some nuance there.
No, I fully get you. But like, I think at this point we can all agree. Like, I don't think there's any Arsenal fan that like wants us to defend in like a 4-3-3 or like a 4-5-1. I think this point we all know that we defend with a double pivot. So, you know, because like, you know, we've also received a lot of questions about like the recruitment in midfield, and why I've been so hesitant to give an answer about that is because it's impossible to find the player that like is Xhaka, but like better going forward. It's like, I don't know who is it. It's like, I don't know, Seedorf, or I don't know who it is.
I mean, there's a food staple that can do it, but
yeah,
there is a food staple that can do it. But if we,
you know what it is for me, Nick, though, mate, like, again, we all have our subjective things, but I think we need to stop with these formation things of a high eight, because for me, it comes down to that zone over formation kind of transition. And we need to understand that we're not talking about a 4-3-3. We're not talking about a 4-4-2. We're talking about a 2-3-5. That is what we're talking about. And how we move those pillars is going to depend on the opposition. And so here, one of the best examples that you love and I love is the dreaded Houssam Aouar. But the reason I love him so much, okay, is say you had my ideology in a sense, and you wanted the pivot, and, you know, you wanted him, and he would function in a left wing in that role. He wouldn't be deep in the pivot. You know, we'd have someone else there, but he would be kind of a left wing or a pseudo 10. The reason that I love Houssam Aouar so much is he can turn into that 8 with a simple sub of taking away one of the pivots and adding a target.
Yeah.
And that becomes an in-game shift that we don't need to rely on a sub to do, right? You really don't. You're adding another attacker, right? But you're able to transition in midfield without sacrificing a player or a sub. And that flexibility is what's beautiful. So you recruit that type of profile, but that doesn't mean that you can't recruit another anchor, for example. And it's not an anchor only for a double pivot. It should be an anchor that, you know, you could do with 2 8s in theory, right? Yeah. Like you should recruit players to do multiple roles on the pitch that can go in different zones, right? Like you're not looking for a role necessarily. And I think that's the biggest thing, at least for me, recruitment wise, when I look at it, where I'm not looking at an 8 per se. I'm looking at people that can operate in different zones of the pitch. So if I have a player, is he comfortable wide as much as he is inside? You know, can he do that both sides? I like that type of player. Is he a ball carrying progressor? Yes, I like that type of player. That's clearly something Arteta values, you know. And yes, if you've ever watched some of my stuff, the dreaded 5-yard burst is something that I love to see in my players, because for me, it's an extension of, you know, hitting those long spaces like we've talked about it. And, you know, especially if you're going to defend in a 4-4-2, every single player has to defend big spaces. Because we're gonna be a halfway line defending team, right? So those are some requirements, I guess. When I get into transfer talk and I talk with people, I find there's way too much FIFA arguments. But George, he's not a high 8 and a 3. He's not this. I'm like, well, if you're looking for that profile, I can suggest to you somebody that is like that. But I don't think we should. We should be looking at players that can do multiple things.
Sure. Let me give you some counterpoints though at this point. Look, I think I agree with pretty much everything you said. However, I think the problem, so like if you we're probably signing a midfielder, like definitely, and I think it's going to be someone in the, maybe we sign Aouar as well, I don't know, but like probably it's going to be someone that's in the Xhaka mold, that he's going to replace Xhaka in the starting lineup if he goes, which he probably will, right? And my point is here, if you recruit a double pivot specialist, you don't really have the versatility to like go into a 4-3-3 in game like you do, or like not 4-3-3, but like high 8 like you do with Xhaka. I mean, not that he's perfect for this role, but you don't really have that versatility, right? You know, for example, let's say you bring a DM and you play him next to Partey as like the two DMs, you don't. It's not easy. You basically commit yourself to a double pivot. I mean, sure, you can change it with subs, as you said, but I think you commit yourself a little bit there. So that's why I think.
Do you think so though? So like my counter that I always use. So like Houssam Aouar is one of those Swiss Army knives that we call it, right? We have one of those in Emile Smith-Rowe, in theory. So say you were to, and it's not just a DM, but say you get that lone anchor, right? And you know, you push Partey up. What you would need in theory is it's not a Tomiyasu that you're getting, but you're getting a Brooke Norton-Cuffy on the right. Now, if you don't recruit that player and you recruit the high 8, you're committing to Tierney a little bit deeper long term. But we also have that different profile in Tavares. We don't at right back. So for me, it's less about committing to like, is it a DM versus 8 argument? For me, it's about filling the profiles everywhere. And that just gives you flexibility because we all have our subjective viewpoints again. And I think when you look at the 4-3-3 and you look at the pivot, again, you're more looking at the 2-3-5. And for me, we've seen enough sample in both areas that have been very successful that it's impossible to say this is the direction that we're going, because no team actually is doing that. The one thing that you can say are those non-negotiables, which is 2-3-5, 4-4-2 block, and a press that involves a man-to-man with zonal coverage. I think those are the 3 like certainties we can be sure about, for example.
I mean, the main thing, I just quickly,
go on, Karen.
The main thing I feel like needs to be discussed is I feel like a whole point of our recruitment has to be someone that is adaptable to both formations, because game state does change constantly. So for example, say we're 1-0 down and we're in a pivot and we need to be chasing the game, you've got to have that ability to push your left side or the right side of your pivot and go, look, we need you to push into that interior role. You need to be higher up and hit that inside channel and try and get into get into spaces that we need you to basically be in to create and progress the ball into the final third. Like we need to, I think we need to get away from this idea that we have a formation that is like one formation and that's it the entire game. Game state alters formations at different periods of game, alters how you approach the game, and the progression of a game will alter how you look at and tactically evolve through that game. So it's not only through substitution, because let's not forget, you only have 3 substitutions. You have to have players that are flexible to play multiple roles and then be able to be comfortable in multiple zones. And I think that's very key in terms of recruitment. I think Mikel has been pretty.
What it is also currently is what people have, and we get into these nitty gritty arguments about numbers, 8, 6s and whatnot. But the big thing that I think a lot of people don't understand is there's some band-aid fixes, just philosophy wise, that this team, for example, centrally, we don't have it. Like when you look at it, there's a big band-aid and a knock-on effect that happens. So say you add a central presence to where that improves Odegaard, that improves Saka, that improves so many areas of the pitch that it gives you different possibilities as well, that the knock-on effects there is, do we need to have Kieran so reserved, for example? If you have a big enough central presence that you rely on and is an outlet up there, now you have 2 outlets that we've seen that can receive under pressure in the half spaces. Does that solve things? In my opinion, it kind of does. It gets you up the pitch, because now it's less about leaving through one area. It's less about White, for example, progressing. Absolutely. If you have somebody that you can rely on to receive in those areas. And, we haven't had ESR fit, necessarily at the same time as all of these youngsters fit, him and Martinelli. I wonder what we're going to see. Like, Nick, we may experiment in those youngsters in terms of what we're seeing right now, which Arteta has alluded to, by the way, multiple times recently. So I really think if I had to like stake my claim on it, I've always been a versatility monger, because there's going to be periods where we're going to love both areas of the pitch, but ultimately, if you don't have that option, we can't use it. And so you become predictable. And that's the last thing that you want to be in the modern game. I think like it evolves so much. I mean, you look at it with Liverpool and Chelsea, we broke that down kind of the other week. And I thought entertaining
other night,
game,
George.
Sorry, not a week, like literally yesterday. But like we broke that game down. Like there was a lot of very interesting tactical things. Like it shows if you have Matic and Henderson in that Liverpool team, it's an impact for them. And they have the same structure, but that quality jump is huge. You saw what Konate was able to do, keeping up the line and whatnot. So I am wondering what happens when you start to fix the big holes in the team, namely the striker, and what that effect has on the rest of the team. Like you saw what the security Xhaka and Partey give to Odegaard, for example.
Sure.
What does that do for our wingers when you have a striker that can receive under pressure?
As well as our fullbacks. Because
that's what I was getting to. Like, what do our fullbacks do now that they know they have a central reference? Both sides, not just one. They can rely on two people in different areas of the pitch. Like, it opens options for players, and I don't have the answers really. I have an idea of what I think we should do. Everyone does, but I think recruitment-wise, you always want to make sure that you're entering the season with all the options on the table, not just one. Maybe that's a cop-out, but that's kind of how I see the priority.
You basically want to increase your ability to create from multiple areas as well as from multiple methods. I think one of the major things this season has been our ability to score from set pieces as well. I think that's been, I don't think we've mentioned that so far. I mean, that's been a major outlet of goals. I mean, Leicester, I think we had this whole period that everyone was having Nico Jova AVIs. Everyone seemed to be loving the dude, and we've been very good from set pieces this year. And when the point I was trying to make is that when you have multiple outlets for creation of shot creating actions, you have the ability to not rely on one specific avenue, and you can be less predictable, as George mentioned. So you want the maximum ability to vary things and give teams different looks. It's like in basketball, Nick. I mean, we're both basketball fans. So you want to basically, you don't want to just rely on your pick and roll offense. You want to be able to hit the low block. You want to be able to kick out wide. You know what I mean? It's like you want to have multiple outlets.
Yeah.
You want versatility, basically, and that gives you the ability to, especially against harder teams, when route one won't work, you can go to
actually, you know what, I have a question for like Nick and also you, Kern, as well. But do you think part of the reason that Arsenal fans, but fans in general, select a magic pill profile, like unicorn player, to get you to the success land is because they're super anxious about getting there? Like, I find it, you kind of described it earlier in the podcast, Nick, where you were like, I need Xhaka, who's really good in the final third, but who the hell is that player? Like, are we talking a Jude Bellingham or a Gravenberch, who are maybe the closest there, but we're kind of describing a unicorn that doesn't really exist.
Yeah.
And so I'm just wondering, is that just because fans are anxious about getting to the top again, and they're like, we need a magic pill, it will fix us? Like, I wonder if that's society in a little bit.
It's like the striker that like combines Aubameyang and Lacazette and Isak and Vlahovic, all of them into one. The target man that can drop deep and create and score. It doesn't really exist, right? So I get your point here. What I want to say really is just that for me, philosophically, I prefer. I mean, it's not even just the 4-3-3 in general. It's the basically having the numbers, the lone six, whether that's a 4-3-3 or a 3-5 or a whatever, or a 2-3-5. I like having the lone six because I think that makes your build up more versatile. You basically, I think, one of the problems I've had with Arteta, especially there was at some point this season where I was getting frustrated because I thought like we commit so many players to the build up. And then by the time we get the final third, it's like two guys because like everyone is dropping. And so like, for example, I remember I was analyzing a game. I don't remember what was it. It was like Everton or something. And I remember we were building up quite nicely, right? But then for some reason, Xhaka was sitting next to Partey. And it's like, why? I mean, you have a player in that zone, right? I don't want, the double pivot doesn't really do it for me because I think that's a zone. I mean, if you have a player that's capable of playing as a lone six, which we do have, I don't think you need a player holding his hand there. So, for example, I think with committing the double pivot, it would be you'd have the two players like we had Partey and Xhaka, maybe Xhaka dropping into the left back, and then you'd have Tierney high up, and then you'd have a player, the left winger occupying the half space. It becomes a little too structured, I think. Whereas the 4-3-3, or like let's describe that in zones. Number 6, high and wide wingers, 2 8s in the half space, and like the fullbacks just not as high, not like slightly deeper. I mean, inverted is like, it's a bad term. Everyone uses it. It feels like no one knows what it means. Let's just say deeper fullbacks. I feel like it's better because it allows you the versatility to like, it's like the pitch is like, there's symmetry everywhere, which I like. And like, it's easier to do positional rotations, especially if you have the players required. So like, when you have, I thought a lot of the time Tierney has been great for us, playing as a left winger, essentially, up until this point, up until we switched to like a 4-3-3 in quotation marks, and playing high up the pitch and being like the outlet up high up. But like, I feel like, I remember Brentford away in the beginning of the season. It was basically, our game plan was like, it was just Tierney, getting 1v1 and crossing. So I think if you have your left back that high up the pitch, it's tough to like have any variation. Like your left back can't come inside, right? He can't. Or whereas if you have your winger there, I feel like I prefer. Like I said, if you have the winger there, it's easier for him to drop deeper or go inside. I feel like the profiles that you need, that you use when you have a 3-man midfield with a player at the number 6 and then 2 in basically equal height, but like in the half space, but like in not one deeper and one higher, Basically, I'm describing a 4-3-3 in like zone terms.
Yeah.
Right. I feel like
so you're basically describing a 2-2-6. I think. Are we?
No.
2-3-5 or?
You're describing a 4-3-3.
Basically a 4-3-3.
Because you're saying that you have symmetry. If you want symmetry in a 4-3-3, you need your 6 to either rotate to one side, or are you having the 6 central and having 3-1 build up, and then are you going 3-1 and then?
No, I mean, the center backs are being split by the number 6. I mean, not in the same level. The number 6 is a little higher in the number 6.
Yeah, so a 3-2-5
then. 3. Yeah. I mean, maybe, I don't know how you call it. I mean,
it sounds.
I feel like describing the formation that we play right now with a term like 3-5 or 2-3-5, I think it doesn't do enough justice. Like Cedric overlaps, he stays deep. Tierney does the same. Xhaka drops deep, goes into left winger spot. I remember like Xhaka all the time against Wolves, he was getting into left wing positions in order to attract the fullback and get Martinelli going. Like there's so much versatility there. So I feel like if you commit yourself to like the 4-3-1 that they had earlier under Arteta, while it was effective, I thought it was a little too one-dimensional because the fullback.
Do you think though, Nick? It's less about the formation, but the players understanding how to rotate there. Because when you're talking about Granit Xhaka,
but it's the starting zones as well. It's the starting zones, right? So if you want the pseudo 10, right? If you have the left winger being at number 10, right? Because Aouar, he's not really a player that like can go on the left wing and like get by 3 players like your traditional left winger. So if you have him on the left wing, you basically commit your left winger being in the half space, right? And that commits the left back being out wide. So
I mean, I
think what you're describing gives us actually less versatility than what I'm describing. That's really my issue with what you're saying.
I honestly don't know, because my biggest thing is I think we end up doing a little bit of semantics where a winger who's really good in and out, for me, is similar if you've got a fullback that's really good in and out. Ultimately, regardless of your starting positions, end up in an end period with 5 channels, and you need at minimum 2 players that are elite in and out, because we've seen rotations, like you said, with Xhaka wide, but for example, that's not a traditional 4-3-3. That's not really the rotation that you would want in theory. But we've also seen Cedric, and it's not that it's wrong, it's just because I think that the players have understood where to fill, and we call it in coaching terms like a shadow. It's almost like a press, right? Like if I go man-to-man on one, there's a shadow marker, and that shadow marker goes to support as a second or a third man. And for me, that's the rotation that's been really great to see personally. I think in the versatility part with having a lone pivot there, it's tough because I see a lot of players in the same zones on the right when we build up as well. Like that holding of the hands happened, for example, with Odegaard and Bukayo and Cedric in that area, as well as Thomas and White when he drives.
But that's more so in the final third. I think.
It is, but I mean, for me, the problem's still the same, that there's a lot of players in the same zones, right? Like the fundamental problem of that, and the reason that one is opened up versus the other, I think it has a little bit more to do with just the players understanding their roles a little bit more.
Sure.
And where to go. Because again, I'm wondering, you've kind of also cited both examples, ironically, with two different strikers, too.
Yeah.
Right, and two different roles in the striker. Like, I think the reason that we have Granit so high up the pitch, by the way, is because Laka isn't a box presence, too. Like, it changes our ability to push players high and to push people deep. Like, the fact that Laka isn't a box presence means that we can't have Tierney high when Xhaka's high. It can only be one, because if both players are up, there's an issue down deep in terms of who's going to fill in. And so he makes kind of an adjustment where he's like, I would rather have Martinelli touchline winger, for example. It could be anybody. It doesn't have to be Martinelli, right? But I have my winger touchline and my 8 high because my striker is not a box presence. And I need 2 people up there to do that. So I think it's a simple move. Say you have somebody that can receive in that left half space more consistently. You just have to shift things. I think it's very similar. Like, my argument that I use is if you have a 4-3-3, your kind of rotation is you've got the touchline winger wide, right? Then on the inside, you've got your winger, let's say, or your 8 or whatever you want to call it. And then deep is your fullback. Again, not inverted, but deeper. That's one rotation, right? Another rotation, which we saw versus Brentford for the goal, was just simply your wide player being the fullback, and then your winger inside, and then the center mid deep. Xhaka came to fill. I think, for me, number-wise, it's the same thing. I don't even think it's better for or against either way. I mean, I like what the defensive positioning, and I've always maintained my pivot persistence is actually more to do defensively than it is to do offensively. But I mean, it's for me, it's the same debate. It's just we need players that can do both. And if you've got a player that can do both, you basically can do both areas, right? Because it all depends, though, what that striker is going to do. I'll be really honest with you, because we've struck gold with a right back in Brook Norton-Covey that I definitely want people to pay attention to. I've been screaming this boy for so long, but he is an option that he can be inside as well. Like, he's one of those unicorn players. I call him a technical Kyle Walker, and I don't do it lightly because I love Kyle Walker. I think he's a one-man transition control. Brook is in the same mold, but he's comfortable in tight spaces and he can be inside. Like, he can do the Tommy role if he was asked to do it. In fact, he's done it for Lincoln. Of course, he's young and, you don't want to throw him in right away, but he gives us an option there that maybe we can have an overlapping right back more consistently. And I don't know if that's the way to go. I mean, I have my feelings about what I want, but I would prefer to have that option than, I guess, put us into one area where we're just, doing the same thing. But it's all hearsay at the end of the day. Ultimately, if Arsenal win,
The other thing is George mentioned defensively, and I think this is the main reason why I'm okay with this pivot. In terms of defensively, I think Palace is a good example of this, because Palace is basically saying we lost our transitions, and that's how we got that draw. So we won that. We got that draw because Sambi didn't hit his man, and I think it was in transition to hit the Edouard goal. And when you have a single pivot, when you're running in transition, you often have one man, and it's sort of just like you can quite easily get overloaded in that transition. You could speaking of that Chelsea versus Liverpool game, you can see that it's quite easy to see how, with Henderson so high, it was easy for Chelsea to basically run through the lines and get it to Kai and basically hit them in transition quite often. So the point I'm trying to make is with a pivot, and when you have 2 man there, sure, it may be a slightly more dreary sort of build-up at times, but the rotations you can do in transition going forward and going back means that you're more secure going back, and in going forward you can always transition to a more aggressive style of build-up, aggressive positioning of your of one of your 8s or one of your 6/8s, whichever one you want to push up. So, for example, a Granit can go high, or a Thomas can come central with Ødegaard going shifting to the right, or you can have lots of different rotations in that ability. Whereas if you're in a 3-1-6, for example, which is why I was building up the 3-2-5, 2-3-5 thing, because Pep uses his 3-1-6 that lost him the Champions League final. You don't have the same ability to control transitions. And this is why I'm a bit sort of like, in modern football, when pace and power is so prevalent, and when you have these monsters that are able to hit you so quick in transition, you need that ability to not be outmanned very, very quickly in the pivot. For me anyway, in this league and in modern football right now. And of course, there will be another evolution of that will run into, for example, a 4-4-2 will evolve, or a 3-4-3 will evolve, or something will come next to sort of outdo this current system. And then football is cyclic. You can keep going through these. So yeah, that's the main point.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've covered pretty much every possible argument in this one. And, obviously, I don't think we're going to get somewhere. I mean, so we know that there are some philosophical differences. We could be discussing it for days. But yeah, I think we should do some. Yeah, I mean, I think we should do some questions now, because we received some. I asked earlier on Twitter. We had some questions. So I think let's get the obvious one out of the way. So we get CL ideal window. Go, Karen.
Rice, Gnabry, let me think.
Messi?
Rice, Gnabry, DCL, and yeah, I think that's good. I mean, Saliba,
how much money would that be?
About just under 200, I reckon. I think maybe 180 to 200, something like that. I think those three profiles give you. Gnabry gives you a left wing security, as well as having ability to have.
Wait, who did you say? You said Gnabry, Rice, and who?
DCL. So you have.
You think that's only like 180?
I think that's between 180 and 200, especially if Everton are, with the current situation with Usmanov, and if they go down, it might.
I think that's a 205 window.
You think that's 205?
Yeah.
100 million on Rice, 60 on Dominic Calvert-Lewin, and 45 on Gnabry.
No. 90, 85 to 90 on Rice. Then
I think he'll go for 100, and even
I don't think he'll
generous.
go for 100. I don't think he'll
especially
go for
all in.
If he does go for 100, I'll say it's wrong, but I'm pretty sure he'll go for like 90-ish. I don't know how many central midfielders have gone for 100. It's breaking precedent, isn't it? I think Pogba.
He'll be a precedent breaker wherever.
It'll be interesting to see.
Yeah.
I see it being 90 personally, and with Gnabry, with his contract situation, I think 50, 55, and then DCL 45 to 50. So I'd say about 190, 200 for me, but we'll see.
Yeah, George.
I've said I'm not a huge striker person. I think I've said it in the past. Like, I'd much rather confirm it to like 40 million in that kind of mark. But I think I'd probably go Dominic Calvert-Lewin and Declan Rice. Those are my two players. And I'd love to explore an Ousmane Dembele free. Yeah, that's not. I know it's not a free, but in that window for me, that's a 160 million pound window. I have this thing with Champions League, by the way. I don't think we'll spend more than 170 million, just in general. And I think that we won't exceed 11 transactions, both sells and buys, because we've never done that before, just feasibility wise. So yeah, I think those are my three there. And of course, we've got Turner coming in.
Yeah, Turner obviously coming in. I mean, in terms of like alternative options, you've obviously got the Awas, the Kamaras, these kind of guys that you can obviously have as cheaper options.
You know who I would also do in my window is Florian Grillitsch too, on a free as a backup DM.
I've been meaning to watch,
yeah. So I think in general, my windows, Dominic Calvert-Lewin, who I think will go for 60. I'm gonna break the bank on Rice. I am in love with the guy. And then I would also do Ousmane Dembele and Florian Grillitsch, both on freeze.
That's good. I mean, I can't dispute that. Striker, I'm still absolutely fascinated by Alex Isak. The more time goes by, I think it's less realistic that it happens, because no matter how much you believe, you're a believer of his upside, if he ends the season on like 6 league goals, we're not paying 70 million for him, 75. So I hope that, if he's indeed the choice, which it could be after we failed with Vlahovic, it could be. So I hope because I really like him, I'm tantalized by his upside. I think if he ends the season strong, I think we should get him. And he's obviously had a great scoring record in La Liga. It's just this year he's had a down year. Not sure why. He's still very young. We'll see. Midfield, I have absolutely no idea. I think in terms of like profile, in terms of what I'm you said, George, I think Bellingham is like a good shout. I'm not sure how realistic he is. I'm not sure.
Gravenberch also, the plan B.
Yeah. I just haven't watched him enough, but I've heard really good things in terms of profile. But yeah, with Bellingham, I don't know if Dortmund will be willing to part ways with him in the same summer that they lose Haaland. Yeah, and he's still only like 18, right? So I think they could get even more money when he reaches.
He's probably
19,
a similar to an Isaac in fee, I would imagine. Like even if we were to guesstimate, it's probably in the 70 million pound mark.
Probably. Yeah. Oh, also, alternative striker. I love Ivan Toney. So obviously I did this big article on him. Similar. It's just because I'm trying to think realism as well. I do love these strikers, but if they don't end the season with many goals, I don't think we'll sign them, just because, obviously Arsenal at this point, they don't care too much about like how that transfer looks, because, nobody really not many people wanted White, nobody wanted Ramsdale. We've seen how it works. However, I think when it comes to like breaking the bank for a striker, if he's like on under 10 league goals, I think you're going to face quite a lot of pushback from some fans.
I really don't think it's that big a deal, to be honest, because like you see the pushback we had on Ramsdale. Ramsdale, everyone hated, and it turned apart from someone else on the screen. But
Ramsdale was like sort of pushed as like a backup and maybe future starter. It's not 70 million.
You know what it is?
That's a good point.
I said this post on Twitter, but for me, the 40 million pound mark is the benchmark for marquee. As soon as you start going above that, there's certain criteria that you need to fill. And I think, but Tony has always been, my plan B of feasibility. Yeah. Like if I can't, and he's in that 40 million pound mark, that's beautiful for me. So I'm with it.
Yeah. Maybe they go down as well. Maybe he's cheaper.
Yeah, this is the thing. It depends on who goes down.
Everton too. We talked about this on another pod. I really think Everton are in trouble, especially if you look at their
I think both are. I think Brentford are as well, to be honest. But
Usmanov leaving, like Everton are in trouble financially. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, and for my winger choice, I've been, I like Dembele, but I'm not sure. I just not sure if I'll pull the trigger on that one because of the wages, the attitude, and the injury issues. If I know that he's staying fit, then I'm giving him 300k per week because he's that good if he's fit and motivated. But he's not. He hasn't been in his career.
What do you make of the Xavi comments? Because he's another one of those modern.
What do you say?
Position. He was like, I want to stop the character assumptions on Dembele. He's a great professional, and I would want him to stay. Like, I'm just wondering, like, he's an example of that modern coach that's involved in doing a different culture. If you could take away that part, does that ease your fear? Like, a lot of times when I talk to people, it's the injuries plus attitude. So I guess I would ask, like, let's take away attitude and trust Xavi, who I think he's instilling a new culture, so it wouldn't make sense for him to add somebody who's not in there. But to be fair, injuries is a very fair concern. But for me, do you think it's not worth it on a free, something like that, when you've removed 800k a week off the wage bill?
Sure, but like if he asks for like above 200k and he's getting paid,
I wouldn't do that then.
I wouldn't do it either. No.
Because then Saka, he's like, you're bringing in a backup and you're paying him more than me. It's like he's gonna ask for
200 is my mark.
I think because the winger we're looking at sort of a backup option. Unless you can get Gnabry or I don't know, or Sterling. If you can bring that kind of talent, then you're paying him whatever it takes in terms of wages. But I think if you're looking at like someone for competition, I think Ismail Assar, Watford going down, he'd be a very good choice in my opinion.
I've said that
he's
for
nice.
so long.
Really? Yeah. He's nice.
I mean, are we going to talk about Serge? Because I think Serge is, with his contract situation, I think that's a very viable option. And
you know what,
he's always been someone that has been wanting to come back as well.
I struggle that you can spend on Serge if you're spending on the striker that much. I just don't think those two, because we're going to spend massive in the midfield. And I think we just disagree maybe on the total expenditure for me. But Ismail Assar, and like if you want the younger version of the superstar winger, it's Sulemana, who I've talked about a ton.
Sulemana's great. Yeah, Sulemana's great.
But I think Ismail Assar is I've talked about him for years, and like I keep saying, like, I'm probably going to use the winger, I'll be honest with you guys, with my window for next summer. Like I don't think I can get everything if I'm getting the two that I demanded. So I'm comfortable with a whole. But if we do, Ismail Assar is a player I love.
Even if we don't, it shouldn't be. It's not that big a deal with the winger situation, because we have so many players. We have ESR, Nelly. There's a lot of players that you can play in that left wing role. So it's not like
me and Nick both want another player that's 2-footed on both wings.
I think we all do,
because I don't want
and play both sides because Pepe is going right. So,
exactly.
Yeah. I think. I mean, yeah. So like
that's why I wanted Serge.
Yeah, Serge is a great option, obviously. For example, like I love Rafinha, but like he only really plays on the right? So even if Leeds go down, I mean, if he's like super cheap, I'd do it. But like
another option too, Nick, he
can't play on the left.
Like another option is doing that hybrid, and I'm going to put this idea, and our good friend A1's going to hate me, but a Rafael Leo, for example, someone who's absolutely elite right now as a left winger, but has the potential to be center forward as well. He's that kind of player, that versatile player. Like he could be like a marquee in both areas, right?
So like get him instead of a striker and a winger, you say?
Exactly.
Because
that's a method. I'm not saying I would do it, but it's something I would love. Sure.
No, because I've seen people say that like get a number 9 and someone like Leao, so you have a backup as well in case. But I think like that really kills any pathway to the first team for Balogun, I think.
For sure.
So if you believe in him, Leao is sort of a similar player profile wise, a technical striker that can play on the left. So young as well. So like I don't know. It depends on how much you believe.
It depends on
we're going to make
decisions.
You know what I did? I sent a tweet months ago, and I said one of the most exciting things about this upcoming summer is we're really going to get a finality to Arteta. And what I meant by that is mainly in an attacking sense. We haven't seen a real attacking addition from Mikel Arteta. I don't really count Lillian, and I don't really count Odegaard necessarily, because that's more in midfield for me. Like it is attacking, but we haven't seen an attacking addition. So a lot of questions will be answered in terms of what he values. And I think it's going to be super insightful, because all of us are smart enough people to suggest a profile if you want. We just have subjective wants about what we're doing. So I think a lot of the windows basically cater to those, you know what I mean? And so like when you have those debates, it'll just give us clarity, I think, too.
The final point I'm going to make on this window is we really need to, because this past summer was about buying and securing under 23 talent that can take through the project for the next 3, 4, 5 years. I'm curious to see whether the strategy this year is to continue with that, or is it? Are we going for?
We're going Liverpool 2015. I'll answer that.
I mean, no. But what I'm saying is, we think that is that still going to be the security? If that's the option, then we've got to go big, and we've got to actually go for it.
I think that's what we do. We don't
do if we do go
multiple. Big, we do 2 to 3 superstar quality, and I think Arteta's basically told us that in interviews, essentially.
Yeah, and
because that's going to be the key. That's going to be the key. Because I think, for me anyway, summer 2023 is the. I mean, me and George, I agree with him on this. We've had this conversation before about 23 being the season for slight tweaks, backup signings.
I call this summer is the summer is the starting 11 window, and then the next summer window is fix the depth.
Backups, and I think that's a tweak as well, because I think 22-23 is going to be a season where we're going to see how far this squad can go, and then 23, 24 will tweak in summer 23 and really go and push. Like if I'm sure if you see in my Twitter, I always think that 24 is going to be our major headline trophy season, because I think 22, 23 will be that sort of real push. But
next year would be about confirming Champions League again, making that plus maybe a smaller trophy, and then the following year would be the title challenge. Progression.
Yeah.
I mean, I see a strong title challenge next year, but falling away. But like, I don't see us being able to make that final leap. I mean, if you watch Gabriel's interview that he gave, he was saying Arteta's already talking about a top 2 finish next year. So
yeah,
let's see where we go from there.
Yeah, and also regarding the point about the age and profile of the recruitment, I think at some point you run into a danger of having too young of a squad, and because that's like my whole. That's why I despise the replace party with someone younger crowd. It doesn't make sense because first of all, he's fantastic.
He's in his prime.
He's fantastic. He's in his prime. It's not like Aubameyang, where it's like he's 32, so he's falling off, so we should replace him. Partey's like at the peak of his part right now. So I mean, you have to have some players that are experienced and are they've been through a title charge or a Champions League win. Like imagine that Gnabry has been there. He was a major contributor to a Champions League winning team. Sterling has been competing for every single trophy for the last I don't know how many years, ever since he was like 17 with Liverpool. So I think signing the kind of player that I mean, even Rice, he was with in the Euros and everything, and this year they're probably going to competing for the Europa. You need players that are good, that are leaders and have the experience, right? So I think
it also sets the culture of the club as well. It sets the culture of the club, and we're saying, look, we are here to advance what you're doing already. We're not here to try and we're not here to try and learn from you. We're trying to help you take you to that next level.
You know what I struggle with, guys, like just in general, there's a lot of narrative online, shock horror and social media, but the biggest things that I've noticed is there's an age requirement at Arsenal, and I'm like, guys, no offense, we've gone from the average age of 27 to 23 and change. We've done that. And then there's also the crowd that's like, well, we need to fix our wage bill. Guys, we've done that. We going into the summer, we're going to have 800K per week freed. That's without sales. Like that's guaranteed in the bank.
Yeah,
that is crazy. That is 3 signings
what's
on
Nico
200K of a week, plus Saliba and Saka extensions. That's what that money gives you without sales. So I always really struggle when I hear those arguments, kind of like you, Nick, where it's like replace Partey because he's young. I'm like, that makes zero sense to me. You have a strong pillar in your team. Why are we looking at the replacement right now? What I'd understand is if you want, something different elsewhere, but this idea that, we have to fix the wage bill. No, you don't. That we have to fix the squad age. No, we don't. We've done those things.
I mean, a key example is Nico as well. Sorry, Nick. The key example is Nico as well.
Oh, yeah.
Another 180, 190, I'm pretty sure, off the bill. It's in one sale.
I think Nico's 140, but like even without sales, like Leno's gone. That's 100K a week. Like people don't realize, like Xhaka, we all think Xhaka's gone. That's another 100K a week. Like, and I always use the Leno, another one. Like there is 300 on very easy, predictable sales. And that's why I use the 800 just to like shut down those feasibility police. Because I'm like, to start with the summer, have that to your face. That's what we can do. We can do 3 marquee 200K a week, which, by the way, is our new ceiling. Without Oba, Partey's on the highest at 200. Like we've reestablished that's the ceiling, clearly, right? So for me, you can do 3 marquees plus the extensions of Xhaka and Saliba, putting them, by the way, on that 200K.
Yeah.
Or sorry, not Xhaka, Saliba and Saka.
You're right.
There you go.
So,
you're right. Yeah. I don't want to keep harping on this, but the whole party has moved. Our project has moved ahead of Partey. Is ridiculous to me.
It's ridiculous
because like Partey, he should be the standard that our project is going towards. Like Partey, our project is not ahead of Partey. Partey is ahead of our project. That's my thing. Our players, like the midfielder we recruit next summer, should be aiming to get to Partey's level so he can partner him. It's not about replacing Party with another 21-year-old baby because like we have a fetish of like having the youngest squad in the league. We didn't do this whole rebuild just to have the youngest squad in the league. We did it so we can have a sustainable way to improve.
And
so,
also,
yeah,
Nick, like
that's my whole thing.
Really quickly too on the Partey part, like really quickly. One thing that doesn't get talked about too, in my opinion, is Granit Xhaka. Okay, look, a lot of people have the Bruno Guimaraes issue of basically saying we need an on-the-ball expert, but then excuse the off-the-ball issues that you've claimed against Xhaka. But beyond that hypocrisy, I really think that the partner that we need to find, though, needs to be a leader that's vocal, though. That is something I will say, because the one thing that we have as a presence right now with Partey is a leader by action, I call him. So he's not vocal.
Right.
He doesn't need to be, but Granit is vocal, and he tells people to push the line out. And we don't really have anybody on that side of the pitch that can really do that for us. So I think his partner needs to be vocal, in addition to complimentary on the pitch, but just mentally. I really like those complementary profiles, kind of like how we see Ben White and Gabriel do really well. Now, a big reason is because they fit each other leadership wise too. You know, like Ben is a little bit more of the lead by action, but Gabriel's a vocal out there. I want to be a leader. Like those things for me, they matter. So I think that partner needs to be a vocal leader. Yeah,
did you see the clip of Jude Bellingham like swearing at his left?
Oh, that pissed me off so much.
I keep referencing it.
Yeah, that's vocal leadership, right?
That's not vocal leadership. That's just
passion. That's passion. Oh my god,
that's football.
Okay,
that's football play on a pitch. That's what that is.
Sorry, we've been going on for like 90 minutes. Let's move on to the final question. Because I want to get to that. It was asked by David, a great writer from the website. So he sent in the group chat. So he said, considering Arsenal have a relatively young and inexperienced squad who has something of a reputation for being inconsistent at times, how do you think they will cope with the pressure of being the favorites to gain Champions League qualifications? Because like for a while we've been like kind of the underdogs pushing United, right? And now we're the favorites, you know, mentality wise, you know, tactics aside, technique aside, ball striking aside, just mentally, how do you think the young guys will cope with that?
I think phenomenally. I've tried to dispel these myths on Twitter for so long, but just factually, we don't have an obstacle anymore, Nick, that we have to worry about. We've won consistently away. If we do another win, that'll be 5 away wins on the bounce. There is no away hoodoo. In terms of the Emirates, it's a fortress again. We are up there with 3rd best home record in league, both on wins, but also just in terms of who we dominate there. We have a standout performance against Man City when they were at their pomp, not a Man City now, but a Man City that, by the way, were in huge form. So we have a performance that way. We've also really beat the teams in and around us very recently as well. And so we have that hoodoo on there. But just lastly, if you look at Arsenal's point tally, it's gone beyond just the last 10 games. People keep shouting that goal differential, but if you go before that, the previous 48 games, we achieved 92 points, which averages out to 2 points per game. If you put that and you extrapolate that to a season, that gets you 73 points. So this notion that Arsenal, we're inconsistent, I really push back on. We've been consistent since Boxing Day of last year. And maybe that's like bookmarking things to suit your own agenda. But for me, that shows a consistency level over a huge sample size. So while I understand the point about a young squad, I think we've battled every single narrative in isolated games, but also just in this season. You look at our consistency against teams outside the top 6, it's immense. It's the reason that we're ahead of all these teams. It's the very reason that we're going to get top 4, in my opinion. So you keep those out in the last 14 games, then yeah, I'm not too worried on the young squad not being able to do it. And in fact, the Brentford was a big turning point in terms of our line. You know, we've had the same squad all season, and we've seen a real progression in this team. I think we've talked about it all pod. People have advanced. You know what I mean? And I don't know if people highlight that enough in team projections. So yeah, we have the youngest squad in the league, but hey guys, it also means that these guys can learn. It doesn't mean that they're not at their peak of their powers. Like it doesn't mean that they're immature for the rest of time. Like we have a changing asset, you know. So I'm very confident.
Yeah.
I mean,
Karen?
I'll just talk about because George has addressed the footballing points very well. I'll just talk about the non-footballing points, because if you look at this squad, you look at Mikel, who is progressed as a manager, as I mentioned earlier, leaps and bounds this season. I think his substitutions have gotten a lot better. His in-game management has gotten a lot better. In terms of the squad itself, we're looking at a squad that is quite compact. You can see that there's no big egos on the pitch. You can see that everyone is united in one front. You can see the unity that is on and off the pitch. I think Ramsdale had a massive effect on that back line. You can talk about how, as we mentioned earlier, about the lower difficulty in terms of even when we have Liverpool. I mean, Liverpool is in between Leicester and Aston Villa, I'm pretty sure. Correct me if I'm wrong. Spurs is in the middle of Man City and Liverpool for Man United. You know what I mean? Like there's it's very much a different set of fixtures, and even when we have difficult fixtures, they're kind of sandwiched in a nice little spots, which is nice to see. It's not the case. I mean, obviously we have to see when the Chelsea and the Spurs games are scheduled, but at this moment in time, there's not really a sort of like big period where you're like, oh god. It's not at the beginning of the season where we had, the Champions League finalists and a team that had just come up and their stadium is roaring to go, waiting to get their team into the Premier League. It's a case now where we just have to keep our game consistent, and I think we have the squad right now that are together. They are tactically aware of what the manager wants them to do, and have a manager that is able to adapt his tactics in game and between games, as well as having time off the pitch, which we will have more than every team. Like I don't know how many times I've seen in group chats. I mean, we've all been in them, that we're like, when are we going to get Arteta ball? I'm waiting. I need more Arteta ball. We're waiting for this Arsenal team to play.
Yeah.
It's sort of like we're constantly like we're jonesing for it. We're like addicts. So it's getting to the point now where you're thinking, hang on a second, we have no other games. We've got a squad that's together mentally, emotionally, and tactically, and a manager that is improving week on week. I don't think there's any worries, to be honest. I really don't. So let's see how we do.
Yeah. All right. So it's been a great one, guys. We went for long. Actually, it's been like
we always do
around 90 minutes. Yeah, a bit more. Yeah, I mean, I was once on their pod and it went like for like 2.5 hours or something. Yeah, it happens. When you have a good discussion, it's gonna happen.
Chalk podcasters like to hear the sound of their own voice.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, you know that I'm gonna listen to this 4 times after we sit down.
Because we're all addicts,
Yeah. So I mean, obviously, I'm definitely gonna be on their own pod as well soon. They're gonna be back here as well, hopefully. So I mean, before we go, shout out your socials as you tell me to do every time I get to your pod. Yeah, the roles are reversed now.
Oh, thanks so much, mate. Yeah, no, thanks so much for having us on. It's always a pleasure. A great return. You can find me at GeorgeV_AFC. Of course, on our podcast, Ball Over Passion on YouTube, or at BOP Footy on Twitter.
Yeah, and you can find me at Current BOP and everything that guy just said. At BOP Footy and Ball Over Passion on YouTube. So hopefully we do need to get Nick on again. It's always lovely getting him on. So
I'll come back
anytime, buddy.
Yeah, awesome. I've been Nick. My ad is NSFTBL, your host. Please go follow us on Twitter at Futbol Idealists. Check the website and stay tuned for the next episode, guys. If you've made it through the end, thanks so much for listening, and see you next week.